just dawning on me now, then it's not the human sacrifice that's the problem. It's not the worshiping the other gods that's the problem. It's that the Hebrews might be drawn to do those types of things. He doesn't care that it happens. Hey folks, welcome to Joel Reads Bible. I'm Joel, and I read Bible so that you don't have to. And this is one of these super special, sexy recap episodes where we go over the last 10 chapters. And a lot of the times when I open these episodes, I do it with a little bit of a preamble and a yap for about a minute or so. Let me know if you guys enjoy that yapping, or if we should do what we're going to do in this episode and get right into it, because I think that this episode is going to be a bit of a doozy. There's some stuff I missed in the original reading that you guys are really going to want to hear, so let's get right into it. And we're starting with Deuteronomy chapter 11. And it's verse 1. And I can't believe this one slipped by me because I kind of was looking for it. And it says, "Therefore you shall love Yahweh your God and keep his instructions, his statutes, his ordinances, and his commandments always." That's right, folks. It's got the big A word, always. There's a lot of places in the Bible that have already pointed out, watch the back episodes, where I highlight all the places where the priesthood and the sacrifices and all that stuff is going to happen perpetually or all the time throughout all your generations. This kind of wording. But we never get it right on the nose where it's like, this law of Yahweh is going to last always. You guys have to keep this always. And why is this important? Well, it's important because Christians reasonably want to get away from the law. The law is horrible. It's incredibly violent and horrific and awful. It condones slavery. It's misogynistic. No modern person wants to have to abide by this law. It is evil. But we still have to worship this God. And this is the foundation of Christianity. Jesus means nothing if not attached to this tradition. How do we get ourselves away from this evil law? Well, we'll just say that it was temporary. We'll just keep saying it was temporary, it was temporary, it was just for those people, it was for no one else, it was just for the Hebrews at a particular time. Here he says it's going to be always, right? So that sounds like it's not temporary. Whoops, that sort of means like there's no time that this law isn't to be followed. But maybe it's just for the Hebrews. Maybe that's the only people that it's for. But that can't also be true because the ancient Hebrews are going into all the other nations to destroy them because they're wicked. Even in, I think it is Genesis, we get this verse that like their sin isn't in full measure yet. And what is sin? Well, sin is the transgression of the law. So this is the law. This needs to be done forever and should be being practiced by all the other nations. Which means it's not specifically for the Hebrews because they are being judged against this law. So the fact that they're not following this law makes them wicked, and we're going to have the excuse to go in and kill them all. We'll bring it up later that there is a list of all the things that the people are doing in the other nations which are directly transgressing this law. So this is like doctrinal Bible stuff that's a little bit boring and nobody really cares about. If you're a Christian and you're watching this and you realize that the law is absolutely disgusting and horrific, and you've been doing everything that you can, and all of the apologists and all of the pastors and everyone in your life has done everything in their power to try to convince you that you don't have to follow the law and that you're not under the law, verses like this say otherwise, and you should take this seriously and go, okay, so if we were going to be true to the cult, we'd have to follow these horrible laws. The smart thing to do is just leave the cult entirely. That's the move that I would do. So then I noticed a very common refrain in verse 17, and this is a common refrain, I'm guessing, for the people of the time. This is a common superstition, and I've spoken of it before, but I think it's always really good to keep this in mind, that this cult of Christianity is built off this other cult that is we need to do XYZ so we can have good crops. And this is reiterated a number of times. This is just typical God of the gaps, not knowing exactly how we're going to have good crops and avoid famines and have a lot of kids and avoid barren women and those types of things. And the way we're going to do it is to, in this case, follow these particular laws and kill a bunch of animals for Yahweh. And other nations around them maybe are killing children. Who knows? But that's what they're claiming. Basically, it says here in 16 and 17, don't worship other gods, or Yahweh's anger will be kindled against you, and he'll shut up the sky so that your land will be barren. Now, we've kind of beaten this a little bit, haven't we? With our greenhouses, I've mentioned before, our factory farming, and maybe it's not perfect, but we actually can do a lot without having to be subject to the elements in the same way that we used to, which is pretty cool. So we've beaten this threat. So what would God do next if we don't follow the law? Is it going to be diseases? We do have diseases that are devastating, and we're still working on them, but we've beaten a lot of the diseases too, Yahweh. Is it natural disasters? Sometimes those are predictable. We actually can get away from the places where some of these things are happening. So we're getting better at beating natural disasters too. When we beat all of the things that you're using to come and get us, what are you going to do next? Are you going to show up finally? Are you going to actually appear and do things yourself? Or will people finally realize none of this is real? This is just very silly, culty nonsense, guys. There's no God that is stopping the rain so that we can't grow crops. Of course, obviously, that was old covenant, so maybe we just don't have to worry about that. Maybe everybody can do whatever they want and God's not going to do anything, which is very, very convenient for the cult leaders who can still say there is a God. He's just being, really aloof lately. It's perfect. Perfect move. So we pointed out in the original reading that Moses is saying that everybody here, all of you people saw that, the Red Sea parted, right? But nobody did, right? The people that he's speaking to in these chapters, well, they are new. They're a new generation because, as you know, Yahweh killed literally every single Hebrew, all 2 million of them over the 40 years. You remember that was the plan, right? Just because they were afraid. He's just no, you're all dead. And there will be people, by the way, who are no, that's justified. No, it's justified to kill 2 million Hebrews in the desert because they had hard hearts. They were grumbling too much. They kept on rebelling. They rebelled one time. They wanted meat. They wanted water. I don't consider those things rebellions. Anyway, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here. But the only people that were alive from that previous generation, I suppose, was Joshua and Caleb. But here it's telling us that, you guys saw this. All of you saw this. You all saw that, right? So the Bible is, again, happens all the time, forgetting its own narrative. So what happens if somebody's just not following their own narrative, when they're getting tripped up, when the details are coming out that don't match what they said previously? What does that indicate? That's right, lying, guys. This is made up. It's just a fictional story. That's why these things aren't going to line up with each other. Someone's going to say something, in this case Yahweh, in a previous chapter, being every single one of you will be dead. None of you will see the promised land except for those 2 guys. That's it. And then we get to, right before we're going to go in the promised land. And he's remember when you guys saw that thing way back in the, you forgot the, whoops, whoopsies, you forgot that you killed them all. So it's obviously a fiction and we shouldn't take it seriously. So in chapter 12, verse 1, we get sort of a similar reiteration as we did in chapter 11, but it's a little bit more specific to the Hebrew people. And we'll just have a look at it. It says, "These are the statutes and the ordinances which you shall observe and do in the land which Yahweh, the God of your fathers, has given you to possess all the days that you live on the earth." So as long as there are Hebrews, they will observe these laws in this land. So now it does seem a little bit more specific, right? The other one is more general. This one's more specific. So, who's to say which is which? It could be, is that a contradiction? Is the chapter 11 one saying what this is saying? Or is this saying what the chapter 11 one is saying? Or is it a contradiction? Which one is it? I don't know, and I don't really care that much. But I find it kind of silly. All of this law is forever stuff is completely ignored in Christianity. Why would the law of an immutable God, who's completely unchanging, the standard of objective morality, why would any of his laws be temporary or not for everyone? Like, even if it were just like eternal for one group of people in one land, let's say this verse is correct. How does that make sense if people are people and God is immutable? Like, I don't understand how much variety is going on here. Like, I genuinely don't get it. Like, what about the ancient Hebrews makes this law perfect for them specifically? Like, they needed this one. Like, this is how it had to go. And now everyone ignores all of the law. Like, there's barely any laws of the ancient Hebrews that would apply to anybody today. Like, really, genuinely. So, what about these people? What was going on with them that made it super, super important that they don't mix fabrics? What was it about their brains, the way that their culture operated, where if they wore mixed fabrics, that would be just the end of them, and then Jesus wouldn't have been able to be born eventually? Do you know what I mean? These apologetics are so dumb. They when you actually look at what it is, what was it about them and shellfish? If these guys had eaten shellfish, before midnight, they would have turned into gremlins. What is it about these particular people? Probably nothing, except that they had these superstitions and this was their knowledge base that they were writing laws from that were kind of ridiculous by our standards because we know better, right? That's it. That's normal. That's fine. That's excellent. If we can get there, that's excellent. Yeah, Yahweh's not involved. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, sigh of relief. You can let it go. Oh, right. Obviously, it's just people. And then we get verse 2 that says, "You shall surely destroy all the places in which the nations that you shall dispossess serve their gods, on the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree." So this gives us a hint of how these people worshipped gods in that time. If it's the Hebrews, it's the exact same thing, which should give us a hint. If you were to zoom out, picture God looking at the planet like a landmass, right? And you see a bunch of people, little tiny ant-like people, building altars, burning things, little things of smoke. I'm picturing an old video game like Warcraft or something. They're worshiping the other gods, but they're just burning things and smoke is coming up and they're all just busy doing their thing. And then over here you have the Hebrews and it's literally the exact same thing. But God is that's for me. They like me. Those guys, do we really think he cares? He's really going to get that upset? He's going to lose his mind and be that's it. I'm going to make them eat themselves if they do that. It just seems so juvenile of an all-powerful being. The amount of times where Yahweh has an ego, and I think we need to focus on this a lot more just to point it out, that there's a huge problem with ego, especially if you're considering this God to be perfect and so far above us. right? Just like otherworldly, completely above, like to be like, oh, they're doing the exact same thing that I want them to do, but they're doing it with a different intention, and that's making me so angry. Why do you want any of this to happen anyway? Like, it's so dumb. Like, you want, oh, I really want these people to like me a lot or to be afraid of me a lot or what? Like, what? What? It doesn't make any sense. It's really stupid. It really is. The more I do these videos, the dumber and dumber it seems. And it's like, I got to go to the whole end of the Bible. I don't think that we're ever going to get anywhere where it's like, oh, good. This is why that they're doing this. This is why people believe this stuff. So in verse 3, we get a little bit more like you're going to tear down the Asherah poles and all that stuff. They're describing this as a holy war. And this is kind of an excuse that even Christians are going to use when you point out this genocide and things. They're going to say, oh, but you have to look at the theological significance, right? As if it changes things, as if it changes the description of what they're actually doing. But it's a little bit of a sneaky trick because it's like, hey, we're just here trying to destroy all these other gods, for our God. So it almost feels like there's this holy war between these God and these other gods, and the people are all stuck in the middle of it, right? Because there's another solution, Yahweh. Just go and destroy their gods. Like, you have the power to do that. Break down all the Asherah poles and all the altars and be like, we're stopping this. I am Yahweh. Not unlike the golden calf thing, although you did get some of your people to kill a bunch of people at the time too. But just show up. Maybe more like the Mount Sinai thing when you came down with the big storm and everything like that, and they were like, "This is definitely God. Let's get away from here. Moses, you go talk to him. We need an intermediary." But he could just do that. He could just be like, "I'm real. Stop doing that." And then they'd be like, "Okay," and then nobody would have to kill somebody else and take their land and live in their house. But it seems like in this narrative, a convenient motivation to steal someone else's land, doesn't it? Seems just a little bit convenient. But it does seem completely like unreasonable, especially if God loves everyone. So if he loves the Hebrews, but he loves the Canaanites, and he loves like all the Hivites, he loves the Amorites, he loves the Amalekites, like he loves all of the people, Egyptians, everyone equally. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Well, God is Jesus, they're the same. They love everyone, but not enough to do the revelation to the other ones. And if you're going to tell me he did do the revelation, then you agree with me that the sin and the law and all those things apply to everyone. So then you're going to have to say that God revealed his law to all the peoples of all the nations and to the Hebrews and said it was going to happen forever. And then you're going to have to wrestle with the fact that you want to ignore the law, I think. I think that that's how that would have to work. But it's so obvious that he doesn't care about anyone else because he doesn't exist, and it's being written by ancient Hebrews who are using this to big up their culture and say, we killed all these other people, and we had the war god Yahweh on our team, and he destroyed all their gods. They don't even have anything supernatural that's more powerful than our supernatural thing. But it's all just myths. And it's written by people who don't realize that God is supposed to eventually become all good and loving to everyone equally. Ugh, if only they had known where the theology was going to go when it was progressively revealed to all the new cult leaders. So in verse 18, we get another mention of slaves. And I don't know if I really leaned into that. It's because it says servants in this translation, but it says, but you shall eat them before Yahweh your God in the place which Yahweh your God shall choose, you, your son, your daughter, your male servant, and your female servant, and the Levite who is within your gates. So the way we know that these are slaves is because if they are servants, like employees, They're not allowed to eat the free will offerings or any of the wave offerings or anything like that. They can't participate in that. But for some reason, the slaves are allowed to do that. These slaves, which we never hear anyone saying, hey, you can go free. These are slaves that are slaves for life. These are Leviticus 25 slaves. So we always see this in every covenant all the time, from Genesis 17 to, Exodus 20. We always see mention of the slaves, and the slaves are part of it. Even Exodus 12, there's mention of the slaves, and the slaves can take part in the Passover, take part in the sacrifices. They live in your house. They are your slaves for life, and they have that treatment. Even the priests' slaves get to participate by eating the priests' sacrifices. So that's genuinely written into every covenant. You got to realize this. God is a God of slavery. He never says let them go free. He never mentions that, right? There's never, unless it's Hebrew slaves. Yeah, I should be very clear. Unless it's Hebrew slaves can go free after the 6 years, of course. But if it's foreign slaves, purchased slaves, they're the ones that can participate in the Passover and the other sacrifices. They're the ones that cannot go free. And they're the ones that are mentioned in these covenants. And it's gross. That's God. He loves slavery. This is a book of slavery, 100%. So then we get to chapter 13. And I did a pretty good job of pointing out that this chapter, particularly horrific chapter, is a perfect comparison to the manipulative, sort of controlling, I'm spying on you or someone's spying on you rhetoric of Jonestown, and I'm sure other cults as well. But what I wanted to add was that this is so effective because when Yahweh is upset, he's known to kill people. We've just gone through all of Exodus and Numbers, and Leviticus, it happens as well, where people are recklessly killed with abandon by Yahweh, sometimes with a plague, sometimes, of course, a priest does it, or they just wait around and then he just or snakes, for goodness sakes. And now we get this other threat of people are going to be sent to try to pull you away, to test you. And if your family does it, you've got to kill them. So the family's going to be okay, we got to keep that in mind. Because Yahweh will actually kill you. Jim Jones wasn't going to kill you. They did a weird thing where they spanked people on stage, which was bizarre, right? And there was weird and actually awful, absolutely awful sex stuff going on there. But Yahweh will strike you dead. He has done it and he will do it again. He will give you diseases. He will make you eat your children, Leviticus 26, right? He is monstrous. And we've gotten this reiterated over and over and over again. And so when we get a verse like this, which is very similar to other cults, the consequence is so much more dire. So you got to be holy, I do not want to do that. I am not going to speak out against this God. Smart. Very good system of control there. And what better way to please adherents to a cult than in the home, right? And this happens throughout the book too. Tell your children. That's a way to indoctrinate them into the cult. But also this thing where it's you're not going to feel safe amongst your own family. You can't speak your mind against the cult with the family. This is a great way to control. This is cult 101. And I don't know why people don't just go, yeah, this is gross. This is scary. Delete, this is again supposed to be coming from the mouth of God. What? That was the old covenant when he used to, run things like a cult. Then he changed and he didn't bring peace but a sword, Wait a second. That's very culty too. Yeah, I didn't come to bring peace but a sword. And I'm going to pit family member against family. Wait a second. That's what this is. This is the separation of families. One family member isn't going to follow. We're going to excommunicate them. We're going to push them away. They're going to be outcasts. Uh-oh. So you mean Jesus is continuing the cult stuff? Well, not on the same level. It's not going to say someone's going to literally kill them in this world, eternal conscious torment and whatnot, but not in this world. It's kind of the same rhetoric. It's the same kind of othering that happens. So the cult perpetuates. Don't be unevenly yoked. The cult perpetuates. So then this last part of the chapter is telling us what the Hebrews need to do if we're going to have them genocided. Okay? And that is obviously just worshiping other gods. And we have to make sure that they're doing it, and then we can kill them all. So I wonder if this is ever going to happen. That's what's really interesting. Let's see when we go forward in the book if they ever worship other gods. And if they do any of the cities get burned to the ground? Because we got the 12 tribes. So if one of the tribes is known to worship other gods, if they ever do that, and I know we're going to have a second golden calf story, I just don't know where it is, but if they ever worship other gods, I wonder if we're going to find you think we're going to find any of the Hebrew cities burned to the ground? We'll see. This might just be another lie in the text. So then in verse 17, it says, "Nothing of the devoted things shall cling to your hand, that Yahweh may turn from the fierceness of his anger and show you mercy and have compassion on you." So he needs the permission to turn from the fierceness of his anger. But what is obviously happening is that he is emotionally responding to you. He's emotionally responding to the Hebrews. Human beings are able to change an all-powerful, immutable, timeless God that's always existed, that being's emotional state. Now, of course, the apologetic is going to be that he doesn't have those emotional states, that's just not exactly what's going on. It just sounds like it's an emotional state. But they're going to say that he actually uses that language here to show us how serious it is. It's an anthropomorphization or whatever. So in our legal systems, the way that we build these things, it seems as though, for the most part, they're not really based on emotion, right? Some justice is going to be justice for the family because they're going to be in turmoil and we want to give them some sense of closure or that justice was done. So I know that there is some of that. A lot of the laws and a lot of consequences are built on what harm was done and how can we sort of stop the harm or deter the harm and damage, even to property. So there's going to be a fine or there's going to be something else that's going to sort of hopefully help the person, recover their loss in some way. With property damage, it makes a lot more sense than something that's a person. But even if it's somebody's health and well-being, maybe they would have some sort of financial remuneration. And that's kind of what we try to do, I think, in our legal systems today. I think that's really what the motivation would be. So if worshiping other gods were super, super harmful, so I'm thinking about when they're trying to stop people from dealing hard drugs to children, because that's going to cause a lot of harm. So we want that being stopped, let's say. Would we ever put laws in place that's don't tell people about other gods, or don't spread the word of all the different gods, don't educate people on gods? Would anybody ever do that? Because worshiping other gods isn't particularly harmful. It doesn't make sense to create any laws about it. Trying to mitigate people worshiping other gods and deter them doesn't make any sense. So let's say somebody followed all of Yahweh's laws, every single more practical law, but they did it in the name of Baal or Baal or whatever you call them. They just didn't do it in the name of Yahweh, right? This wouldn't be a harm to them. This wouldn't cause them any pain or suffering, but it would hurt Yahweh's mood and emotions. It would make him angry. That's the only thing that would get mad or the only thing that wouldn't be happy about the situation. The guy, following the laws, he's living a perfect life because that's Yahweh's perfect law. He's just worshiping the wrong God, right? Who are we worshiping God for, and what does it change? Well, God is jealous, right? When we worship other gods, he gets jealous, he gets angry. So to say that we don't affect God's mood is incredibly counterintuitive. I think what's happening in the text, at least in the Torah, is that the God character here wants you to follow his laws for him, and it bothers him, and it makes him angry. It actually changes his emotions when you don't. And again, what I said previously, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's really stupid. It's really juvenile. But if we don't affect his mood, and he is saying this because he wants you to know how not upset he gets, but how devastating it would be to you if you were to worship other gods, even if you were going to live a wonderful, perfect life, why can't you just say that? Like, why can't you just say the thing? Oh, no, it's because they wouldn't be able to fathom it. They wouldn't be able to fathom it's just not good for them. You can't just say that. You have to say, I'm really angry. I will be angry and I will destroy you. That's the language you have to use because these people were just so stupid. These people that wrote the book that you base your cult on were so stupid that you couldn't just say, hey, you got to worship me, don't worship other gods, because worshiping them, even if you live the exact same lifestyle, will actually cause you a lot of hardships and problems. Somehow it's going to cause you a lot of harm and damage and like, it's so dumb. But I think you get what I'm saying. Either we're affecting God's mood or we're not. If we're affecting God's mood, that's stupid and is obviously nonsense and fictional. But really, there's no other reason for God to be so serious all the time about worshiping him and not worshiping anyone else, except for the fact that he's jealous and moody and is going to lose his precious little mind. Because if it is that he has our best interests at heart, worshiping a particular God isn't going to change a lot. It's the practical application of laws or rules or things like that. That's really what matters. That's what matters in any legal system. It doesn't matter who you worship. That's dictatorship. That's the only time that matters, and it matters to the dictator. That's it. And imagine God actually loved you. Just like imagine that for a second. Or even like the Hebrew God actually loved the Hebrews. Like, wouldn't he just do things to win you over? Wouldn't it be less of like, I'm going to threaten you and tell you I'm jealous and be angry and say that if you want to, not make me angry, you better love me back. Why do you need to bring threats into this if you're all powerful? Just do some like serious love bombing, which people are going to say that that's what Jesus was, but he wasn't even that. Like, that was a few parlor tricks and then a human sacrifice and then a bunch of threats of hell. Like, he was still doing the threats, guys. It doesn't get any better. This is obviously cult control. Like, it's obvious what it is. I don't understand God's jealousy. I can't get my head around it. Just think about what he does. God hardens people to destroy them, right? We read that earlier here in Deuteronomy. He hardened Pharaoh. He hardened, was it Og or one of these kings? And in Joshua, we're going to see a bunch more of them. And now he's deceiving people in order to test them, knowing that they're going to fail. There's going to be parts in the Bible where it says he gave the Hebrews these laws knowing that they weren't going to be able to keep them. He punishes the tester too in this chapter. The tester that he compelled. He's the villain, guys. Just listen to this. What would it look like if God loves you? What would it look like if God was love? It wouldn't look like this. Miles away. Unless you renegotiate the word love to mean whatever God does. But come on. That's nonsense. Chapter 14 was a little bit of a nothing to see here. So we're going to move on to chapter 15. In chapter 15, I was like, these people are like in debt. Hey, if you have brothers, they need money, give them the money. And in the year of Jubilee, forgive their debt. So if you give them money in the 5th year and then the 7th year shows up, doesn't matter. And don't give them money. Don't not give them money in the 5th year just because you know that the year of Jubilee or the 7th year is coming. I don't know if it's called the year of Jubilee, to be honest. And then it's like, hey, have slaves if they can't pay their debts. It's like, how is there a debt slave if you're forgiving all sorts of debts? And so I asked my good friend Justin over at the Deconstruction Zone, I was like, what is going on here? What's happening here? And he was like, oh yeah, those are just like smaller debts. They're not like huge debts. I had said like $20,000. It's probably just like enough for a candy bar maybe. Or probably more than that. Oh, you borrowed $150. Forgive it. Forgive it in the 7th year. There was a section here in chapter 15 that talked about how like if you have a debt with your brother or whatever, you've lent your brother money, you can forgive it. Of a foreigner, you can require them to pay. But just like from your brother, from one of you, don't do that. Just forgive it. And that makes sense as a tribe, right? Like that exclusivity makes sense if you're tribal, you're a group of people, like even in your family, we don't make our brothers pay us back, just forgive your brother the debt. It's okay, let it go if your brother owes you money, that kind of thing. But if it's a foreigner, give him some cement shoes, it's one of those types of things. Nowadays, we are, I think, overall trying to be a little bit more open to the people of the world, right? The world's gotten a lot smaller because of the internet and things. And so we're trying to be less tribal, more inclusive. So this was maybe necessary in those times for that group of people to be protective of their clan and their tribe for some reason, maybe. It's not indicative of an all-loving God. It is indicative of like their tribal war God, but it's not indicative of like an all-loving God who's got the whole world in his hand. Like, you know what I mean? That doesn't sound like that God. If it were that God, I don't think we'd see this separation. I think we'd see just like, let's get together, everyone together as one big, beautiful world. By the way, there's a pile of people in all sorts of other places that you guys have never heard of. You might want to go tell them about me. Don't worry, that's going to happen, and it's going to be a bloodbath, But if God were all loving, he'd be inclusive. You'd see inclusivity. That's how simple. It's so simple. He would be super inclusive. This book would be revolutionary. In a good way, not in the horrible way that it has been, but like it'd be like, oh my goodness, we're going to include everybody. But it's not like that. It's like us versus them, which is not God, which is not an all-loving God. That's more of a tribal person. And then, of course, this chapter has more slavery laws. It's kind of a reiteration with a few slight changes. And I'm still surprised that God couldn't have like pitched in some way so that they wouldn't have to have slaves. Just like whatever would have had to happen, just like do that, God. Apologists often say that these people had slaves because of the hardness of their hearts. Is this what you want slaves for because you're so evil? Is it like the Hebrews were just like that evil and monstrous that like they wanted slaves? They wanted them. Is that why people have slaves? Because it's like a hoot? Because they're so bad, they want someone to beat? They're just awful? Or is it because they have some sort of feeling of necessity? Like, I'm not saying it's ever justified, but I'm saying that someone might have the feeling that this is necessary, or that it would make their life easier at the very least, right? That's got to be why people are doing it, not because they just love abusing people. I'm not saying there's nobody like that, but I'm saying that can't be the rule. So could God have given them some wisdom and rules, or even created a reality where people didn't feel as though it would be necessary to have slaves, because I don't know that slavery is ever necessary. But people wouldn't have that like, oh, I think we need this, right? That we're desperate. Let's subjugate another person, right? Or even that like the other people would be like, we'd like to, the apologetic where they want it to be slaves. So there might be some people that are like, I would rather not die in the street. I'd rather be somebody's slave. Actually, I'd rather be free and not die in the street. But if my only other option is to be a slave, then I'll do that. What if God could have, now I don't know how powerful you think he is, but what if God could have made a reality where that wouldn't have been a necessity for the slave either? That guy would have been doing fine. He would have had some sort of work or some sort of job, or maybe wouldn't even need that. Maybe there'd just be fruit and trees and berries and all sorts of wheat and everything just like there for the taking, and everybody lives in a lush utopian society. Could God have done that, even like closer to that? And if he had done that, wouldn't these people just like gladly transcend the cultures around them? Like, and I'm saying like those cultures still do the slavery. They're still awful. God is still, screwing over all of those people, right? He's making them slave drivers because he's making them live in difficult times and with famines and all that kind of thing, and not helping them at all. But with the Hebrews, give them truly a land flowing with milk and honey, where you don't really need like extra help. And if you have them, you can afford to pay them, right? Just like that kind of thing. Just fix it, just that little bit. Like they were going to do, my point is that they were going to do it anyway. Can't be because of who the people were. It's more likely because of the times in which they were living, how life was in those times, and the feeling of necessity. And that is stuff that God could have mitigated. Those are things that he could have changed if he really cared. He could have made it so that people did not feel a motivation to own other people as property for life and beat them. It's just that simple. And before you say that would infringe on someone's free will, it wouldn't, because God is choosing how lush the ground is going to be, how well the crops are going to grow, how many livestock are going to make it. He's choosing all of that. He's deciding how expensive it's going to be to raise cattle. He's the one that chooses all of everything. He sets all the parameters. So he could have made life just a whole lot easier. And that would not have been infringing on free will. It would have been a conscious choice, because of how difficult the world is his conscious choice as well. It's all him every single time. I mean, it's not. He doesn't exist. But if it were true, it would be him. So in chapter 16, we get some yeast coming back. And I'm always curious about this yeast thing. It's like they're so serious about the yeast. And in this passage, it tells us, kind of why. They're like, we were in a rush. We had to leave in haste. So we didn't have time to use yeast. We didn't have time for the bread to rise. And it's kind of like this poetic thing. So we never use yeast when we do these, Passover festivals, and we remember what we went through. And of course, a lot of people, not just me, don't think that they went through that, right? They don't think that there was a Passover, that there was an Exodus from Egypt. That stuff didn't happen. So what are we celebrating? Like, what does the Passover celebrate for Jewish people? And it seems like it's maybe more of a story that represents a true thing that happened. And this is, of course, going to be the Babylonian exile. So why are we creating rituals and things around a fictional story that represents the other thing? I think it might be sort of like this poetic kind of storytelling through metaphor and these types of things. When you can't like face the truth of something head on because it's too painful, that sort of thing, that kind of feeling. There's where like you maybe you write a song or a poem or a story. I'm sure a lot of movies and novels and all these things, people do it all the time, where it's like they will write the story, but the story isn't really about two birds or something like that. It's about something completely different, but they can't really face it head on. It would just be too hard. So they create this fictional narrative, maybe in this case a myth, that represents what they went through, and they still celebrate that just to keep that distance from the pain that they really went through. That was what I was thinking maybe is what's going on here. It's just them sort of remembering without looking directly at the pain of what they went through. And then eventually their ancestors and whatever. And then that gets passed down as tradition. That's just a guess. This is just like a wild guess. But it was something I thought of because I'm like, why are we celebrating the Passover even today if this is a fictional story? That's just based on something true. And then in chapter 17, there was not much to add. I basically nailed it. I basically said everything perfectly, and then nobody needed to. And that's great. So in chapter 18, we get a list of the sins that all these people are doing, which is probably the reasons why the Hebrews are going to kill these people. These are the abominations that God is saying, don't do these abominations. These are the things that these people are doing. You will not be doing them. And a lot of them, I would say most of them, are things that are listed in the laws of Yahweh, like, sorcery, for instance. Not all of them, but they all probably fall under a very similar category. So it says, there shall not be found with you anyone who makes his son or his daughter to pass through the fire. One who uses divination, one who tells fortunes, or an enchanter, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or someone who consults with a familiar spirit, or a wizard, or a necromancer. So a lot of those do show up in the laws already, but these are some, like, a few extras, like necromancy. I don't remember that as a legitimate concern in the other laws, but okay. So human sacrifice is just one of many sins which are going to result in Yahweh sending in the soldiers to destroy them, which again tells us that everyone is under the law. It's kind of the theme of this episode is everyone is under the law. They're being judged against God's law that applies to them, not just the Hebrews, right? Do Christians believe in sorcery? Do Christians genuinely believe in charmers and necromancy? Do they believe in wizardry? Are they looking around like, there's a guy with a big pointy hat with stars on it and a long beard? Do you think if somebody were to, tell fortunes or speak to spirits beyond the grave, do you think they should be punished by genocide? Do you think that those are worthy crimes for a genocidal punishment? Do Christians believe that? Should enchanters be killed? Should they be completely killed to death? Like, is that a Christian view, or are they just like, no, back then there was just a bigger problem with people, reanimating bodies. People would be dead, and then they'd get the spirit back in the body. And constant problem, ongoing problem. Can people speak with dead spirits? Is that real? Like, do you think that actually happens? Why do we not just realize this is fake? My problem is, and this happened with the Nephilim thing, where I found out, because I was never taught this when I was a Christian most of my life, but I learned that the Nephilim were, hybrid giants, right? Half fallen angel, half person. I was like, oh man, this is fiction. All right, I'm going to start talking about this more so that Christians realize what's in their book and they can finally just drop this stupid thing. So I started telling Christians about it, and they were like, yeah, no, we know. That's why the flood had to happen. They were monsters. And it's like, what? You believe that? And this is one of those situations where, like, I tried to talk to a Christian about this recently, and they were like, still happens today. I'm like, what? Where's the necromancy? Like, what are you talking about? Sorcery? Divination? Like, are you kidding me? This stuff doesn't exist, folks. Like, what is wrong with you? And the point is to send people in to kill a bunch of people because they're doing fictional magic. They're doing all sorts of sorcery and stuff. That's not real, guys. For God to be like, stop doing that fake magic. I'm going to kill all of you. That's insane. That's insane to believe that your God believes this because it's so dumb. But obviously, you probably have to believe it. That's the problem with this cult, right? So you're in the cult and you read something like this and then you're like, oh, well, I guess sorcerers are real then. I guess there really are wizards. So sad. So sad. But now I want to make an apology. In chapter 19, I made a mistake and I was calling the Avenger of Blood a murderer. And I think I called the manslayer a murderer too. The manslayer accidentally kills people. He's not a murderer. And I realized that when I was editing it, and I left it in there. I left in the mistake. But the Avenger of Blood also isn't a murderer because he kind of had the right to kill the other guy back. So if he had killed him, it wouldn't be a murder. But the manslayer gets to go hide in another city. If he leaves the city, the Avenger of Blood can get him. This is a bit of a gray area, but it seems like it's going like this. If you accidentally kill someone, then it is justified if someone kills you back. Justified because they're avenging someone's death, but not if you live in another city. If somebody kills you back, depending on where it was, then it's wrong. But if it's, if you're in the wrong place, then it's murder. Would they be a murderer if they go to the city and kill him? Like, does that mean it's unjustified? Because it's justified that they kill him in some circumstances. Would that still be justified in a sense because he still did kill your loved one, but it's just not the correct way to do it? Like, what are the laws there? It's a little bit confusing when, like, sometimes it's okay to kill certain people. So in verse 8, it says, if Yahweh your God enlarges your border as he swore to your fathers, if he does it, if he does something that he promised to do, if he keeps his promise. And I was like, maybe that article if isn't supposed to be there. It's maybe in my translation, not in the other translations, and I shouldn't take it seriously. But I went back and I read every translation. They all say if. Not all of them, but most of them, like 90% of them, say if. They use this word if. So Yahweh keeping his promise, a promise, something he swore, is dependent upon them following the laws. Which is weird. It's like, why say if? Like, You'd be like, I will be doing it because you will be following the laws. Why don't you just say that? But he made promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, never mentioned a condition. He just said, I'm going to give you tons and tons of descendants. And then he's like, if I end up doing it, then I'll give you more land. I'll have to make your country bigger. Maybe this was written by people who were like, we have what we have right now. We don't know if we're gonna get bigger, more people and stuff like that. So we'll just say like, if it happens, just to encourage people to do that, because they keep forgetting that God's all-knowing and unchanging and keeps his promises. Like, they just keep forgetting those things. So they added a condition on it. So silly. So then we get this image that if someone does the murder, of course, don't pity him, bring him to the elders and kill him. Like, we're going to purge the evil from among this society. The same language is used for sorcery, human sacrifice, and worshiping other gods. It's kind of always the same language. They're all on par. They're all the same reaction. We will not show pity. We will end their lives. We're going to purge these infidels, specifically the ones worshiping other gods. We're going to purge them from amongst us. This is othering at its finest. Like, I can understand the murder, can understand the human sacrifice. Sorcery, obviously, I think that's silly and fake. But even if it was real, it's like, really? Is that serious? Worshipping other gods? Seriously? We're going to be killing people and not showing any sort of pity? It just doesn't feel right. But this is why Christianity and other Abrahamic cults have justified literally killing people that don't follow their cult. Happens all over the Abrahamic faiths at different times. There's obviously a lot of othering that happens societally and in families and stuff like that, and all of it's harmful. In this case, we have this messaging of like, kill them, show no pity. They're worshiping another god, kill them, right? Like, that's what's happening here. As if they're a murderer, kill them. As if they're sacrificing children, kill them. That's the messaging of the holy word of God that people are following and adhering to. And this is what's made them, kill people for their cults. It's not new. It's not hard to do the math on this one. And it's very, very scary that this has happened. Like, this is real. And it hasn't just been Christianity. It hasn't just been Islam. It's happened all over our world. Kill the infidels. They don't worship the same God as us. They're just like murderers. It's all on the same level. So we don't want this kind of book around. We don't really need it. This kind of rhetoric isn't going to be helpful right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's not necessary. I don't think this is the morality that we want underpinning any of our countries. This isn't the kind of rhetoric that we really just need around at this time. Let's move past it. Why are we still looking at this book for anything when this is the kind of garbage that it pukes in our faces? So then we get verse 17, which is, then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before Yahweh, before the priests and the judges, who shall be in those days. So this is like a court case of some kind, and Yahweh's there. Now, obviously, Yahweh's not there. He's not going to actually be there. This is manipulation, right? This is like swearing on the Bible. This is Santa Claus in a way. You don't want to lie. Yahweh's here. He'll tell us. He'll whisper, right? Deuteronomy 13 again. This is Jacob and Laban saying, I'm not going to be there, but don't marry another woman. God will be watching. This is them using God to motivate people to be honest and that kind of thing again. God is being used as a secret authority, which will somehow help the judges judge, apparently, or something like that. Could this go wrong? Could this kind of rhetoric go wrong? Could this be used nefariously? Is there any chance that somebody could use this power of this lie in a corrupt sort of way? Do you think that could ever happen? You think so? I was thinking about like asking Christians if they think Yahweh still sits in on a court case. You think they're still there kind of helping, guiding anything in our world today with all the, there's wrongfully accused people behind bars, It's hard to know sometimes. Do you think Yahweh is there helping just to make sure that no innocent people go to prison or something like that? I bet you they'd say yes. I bet you some of them would say yes. You know why? Because it doesn't cost you anything. You can easily say, yep, for sure. Yeah, he's there. I believe he does help. He does put the leaders into power. You can say whatever you want because it doesn't do anything. There's no indication that it's true. You can just say things and people might buy it. They might not buy it. The people in the courtroom might be more honest if they think that God's there. So just say whatever you want. That's what this is. It's just like say things and see if it'll manipulate people to do what we want. Just give it a shot. They can't disprove it. We can't prove it either, but we'll try it. So then we have verse 21, and it says, you shall not pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. This is, of course, Yahweh giving more laws to Moses. That's what's happening in Deuteronomy. Jesus is going to say, you've heard it said, as if this was just like a random, like just some, people have been talking, and they said, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Yeah. Well, now I'm going to say, and then he's going to change it. He should have been like, remember when I mentioned to Moses ages ago, I barely even remember myself, but like ages ago, I told him, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. But now I say, whatever he says now, turn the other cheek or what have you, or love your neighbor as yourself. I don't know, love those who hate you or something like that. But he's just contradicting himself. It's so silly. He didn't just hear it through the grapevine. Like, come on, Jesus. Remember what happened. It was you. Whoever wrote the Gospels should have paid closer attention. Then we have chapter 20, verse 10, classic. When you draw near to a city to fight against it, then proclaim peace to it. It shall be, if it gives you the answer of peace and opens to you, it shall be that all the people who are found therein shall become forced laborers to you and shall serve you. So this is more of Yahweh loving slavery and wanting as many slaves as possible for the Hebrews, giving them a lot of reason to take slaves. This is a command of taking slaves. That thing that they always say, God never commands it, he commands it. Why is this okay? Why is it okay to take people as slaves? And I think the answer is going to be they were worshiping other gods. Again, killing the empathy for anybody else and going back to the infidel. They're infidels. We're able to subjugate an infidel. They're not people. Why wouldn't we? That's great. But just because they were like worshiping other gods, or even if they were doing human sacrifice, do we really think that it's okay to subjugate them as slaves? Is that fine? And how long? Like how the people that are doing it, they are slaves for life or whatever, and then they have kids, and then they have kids. How many generations are we keeping these people as slaves before they've paid the price of their parents who were worshiping other gods? Like, and I'm not even convinced that these nations fall under the other god thing. I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know that they would, why they would follow Yahweh. Yahweh hasn't revealed himself to them. So, like, again, he's kind of like making it so that he can do this. I mean, he hardens people's hearts so that he can genocide them. He's probably keeping himself extra hidden so that his people can make them into slaves. I wouldn't put it past him. But if they were worshiping other gods, don't you think he would completely annihilate them? Because isn't that the rule for that? So maybe they're not. I don't know who they'd be worshiping. Maybe nobody. This is a timeless God. This is a God of objective morality who's all loving, apparently, just like these people get to be your slaves. They're probably not even doing human sacrifice because they are kind of showing pity on them by offering them peace. So is it just that these are different people? These are just another ethnicity, a far-off city, doing their own thing. All right, you guys will be our slaves, or we will completely kill you. Or maybe it's that they do all the bad things, but Yahweh doesn't care because they can't influence the Hebrews as much. Just dawning on me now, then it's not the human sacrifice that's the problem. It's not the worshiping the other gods that's the problem. It's that the Hebrews might be drawn to do those types of things. He doesn't care that it happens. He doesn't care what any of these other nations are doing. He wants the other nations to be killed so the Hebrews can take their stuff, live in their land. The far-off people, fine, you guys do what you want, but you're going to have to pay us some money to support us. This is just ethnocentrism. That's all that is. It has nothing to do with morality or laws or anything like that. That's all just a lie. That's all just apologetics. So maybe I was wrong at the beginning of this episode. The law isn't for everyone. The law is only for the Hebrews because these other people can do whatever they want. But they can't do it close to the Hebrews, and they can't do it in the land that God has promised to the Hebrews. So God must kill all the people that are in there so that these morons that are the Hebrews won't slip into worshiping the wrong God. They're just so dumb and aloof, right? They're just going to fall for anything. So he has to kill all of the Canaanites, put them in their nice little land, keep them away from anyone else that's doing all the other bad stuff. But they can do the other bad stuff. We don't care. Let them kill as many babies as they want. It's fine. Let them worship other gods. I don't care. Just don't influence my people, and my people can't do it. That's probably what it is. Classic Yahweh. Guys, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Stay tuned for my special episode that's going to be coming up in a few days. I appreciate everyone that watches my videos, especially those that watch them to the end. I appreciate the members on the channel. You guys are incredible. And everyone that hangs out, liking the videos, subscribing, commenting on them, hanging out in the live streams, all those things really make this channel grow. And it's become a really fun community and a cool place to sort of try to dismantle some of the harmful ideas of this cult and just to show how stupid it really is. Because, and I know that, you know, maybe some of the time calling it out and saying it's stupid isn't really nice and it's going to turn off some Christians or whatever, but it's hard to dance around or wear kit gloves or pretend like there's some legitimacy to it when this is what's going on here. You know what I mean? Like, why are we pretending like there's something to this just because there's a lot of Christians? There's a lot of Justin Bieber fans, but that doesn't make it right. Right? So I know there's going to be a lot of Justin Bieber fans that are going to bite my head off, but you guys get it. But anyway, have a beautiful rest of your week, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.